What's up, everybody? Welcome to Move the Sticks, presented by Zaxby's. DJ Bucky back with you. Buck, how you doing, man?
Man, I'm all good. Can't complain. Great day.
Another day, another great guest here for us. Love it when we get a chance to visit with people that are plugged in and people that are good friends, and that's what we have now. Bruce Feldman, you know him from Fox Sports. He's their insider there for college football. He's a best-selling author, has written some fantastic books on the sport. This one, though, has me more fired up than any other book that he's written. It's called Flip the Script, Lessons Learned on the Road to a Championship, all about the 2019 LSU Tigers and head coach Ed Orgeron. Bruce, thanks for joining us. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, guys.
Well, there's so much I want to jump into, but first of all, I want to just start where the concept. I always love it when you come up with the concepts for these books. When did the concept pop into your mind about tagging up with Ed Orgeron once again?
So I did this recruiting book called Meat Market, which was really about the process. And Orgeron was the central figure in it. It was around his program at Ole Miss. And the book did really well. And so a lot of people had always asked me, hey, are you ever going to do a sequel? Thinking it would be like on Texas recruiting or Michigan recruiting or whatever. And I never thought that, it's such an investment in time. It's really hard to get the level of access to let somebody let you go behind the scenes for that long. So I was just like, I don't know if it's going to happen. And then I kept in touch with Orgeron over the years. And about 18 months ago, he was raving about this assistant coach he had hired from the Saints. And obviously that's Joe Brady. And he was like, man, it's just, we're different now. So I flew down there and spent a week at LSU in all the meetings and around Joe Brady and at the practices. And he was right. I came away convinced, and this is April of 2019, they're going to have an amazing season, assuming Joe Burrow stays healthy, because they had so much going for them. And it was just, you'd never see at LSU the offense just kicking the defense's butt so badly. And that's what was going on. So at that point, I started working on the book proposal that is now Flip the Script. And over time, I just kind of kept an eye on it. And then when they beat Alabama, I was like, I got a book. It's a no-brainer now. And because I knew in the book I could get into Orgeron's personal story in a lot more depth than even in Meat Market, because, yes, he coached them to a national title. And everybody knows he had a spectacular flame out at Ole Miss as his first time as head coach, but also, you knew the Pete Carroll stuff that he worked with him at USC. But I think the depths of his story is you're talking about a guy who in his 20s was on Jimmy Johnson's staff at Miami. They're winning championships. He's coaching and developing Cortez Kennedy and Russell Maryland and later Warren Sapp. But his life spirals completely out of control. And he loses his job and, basically ends up with nothing and realizes I got to go to rehab. I need real help here. So he ends up in John Lucas's treatment center for 45 days in Houston. And I think he learned the lessons to really kind of be very critical into the mistakes with him. I can't blame my AD. I can't blame I didn't have the resources. Yeah, those things might have been true, but it starts with me. So I think he learned from his mistakes at Ole Miss. He learned from his buddy Lane's mistakes when they were together at USC and at Tennessee. And then I think he learned from Les Miles' mistakes when he was an assistant under him for a brief time at LSU. So all that was the backdrop into what I was like, to me, this is a no-brainer. And then to be behind the scenes when they won on that national title run, the week going into the Georgia game, then blowing out Oklahoma, and then really, whipping Clemson, I just knew I would have great stuff from it.
Bruce, in thinking about the LSU program for so long, from a scouting point of view, we've always regarded them as an elite program because they had blue chip players. But for whatever reason, on the field, they just hadn't been able to get over the hump based on what we thought their talent level was. When you think about Ed Orgeron and the coaching job that they were able to do, what was the difference this year than previous years in terms of them getting over the hump and being the team that we've always expected them to be?
Well, I think the biggest thing, Bucky, was there was a buy-in, right? Like I mentioned this to one of the guys on the Oklahoma staff right before they played them in the playoff about the way they prepare during the week. When Les was there, and this is not to fault Les, because this is, I think, the way a lot of people did it for years, it was long, arduous physical practices. And I'm not just talking about like in training camp, like all the way through the season. And so Orgeron really listened to the science and listened to his trainer, Jack Marucci, and Tommy Moffitt, the strength coach there. And so he scaled back the practices in terms of the length of them. Now, he wanted the intensity to be higher than ever, but shorter practices. What he also did was he really cut down on long staff meetings. He doesn't want full staff meetings. They have one a week, whereas a lot of programs would have one a day. And he was like, that's just not good energy for the program and everything. And I think what ultimately worked here, and I think this is, you're seeing a transition phase going on now, because a lot of the, as you guys well know, like most of that starting 22 is in the NFL, and the ones who aren't, the best receiver they have, Jamar Chase, he opted out. Tyler Shelvin, really good D lineman, he opted out. Kerry Vincent was a starting DB, he opted out. So those guys are not there now, but the guys who were there last year and the staff, I think he had total confidence in them and trusted. And so, everything kind of was built towards that. And I didn't realize this until we started working on the book, but Joe Burrow was basically like a player coach, the way he treated him and the things he delegated. And when you see in the book, and he says this, and remember, he was at USC when they had Matt Leinart, who he thinks the world of, but he was like, I've never been around a quarterback like Joe Burrow. And granted, Joe's dad was a longtime coordinator in the MAC at Ohio, but I think he saw in him a guy he was like bounce a lot of stuff off of as a conduit. And because Orgeron's not really hands-on with the offense, he lets Steve Ensminger and Brady do it. It was like, hey, Joe, come to me and tell me what you want me to tell them if you need to. And he gave him complete trust. And so how that translated, and I didn't realize this really till I got to see him in person, was I'm on the field right before the Georgia game for the SEC title game. And the team I saw that morning was more focused, looser, and way more confident than any team I'm around as a sideline reporter. And they looked exactly the way they do at a Wednesday practice. And I think that's pretty rare when you can get a team carrying itself like that.
I want to go back to Joe Burrow here. You talked about when he first got in there, Bruce, like what was there a moment? Was there a story or something where they were like, okay, this is it. He's the real deal.
There is. So he didn't win the job right away. And Ed even thought, you know what, they think his arm got a little stronger. And they were like, I don't know, it looked like he had a dead arm. They were not really wowed by his arm at that point at all. And obviously it's not like he's Josh Allen now, but yeah. I think it was, okay, this guy didn't play at Ohio State. We believe in him. Let's see what we got. Well, he hadn't won the job yet. Most of the team, or a big chunk of the team, wanted Justin McMillan, who ended up at Tulane, to be the guy. He had the locker room. So Ed was like, hey, I got to if Joe's going to win the team, he's got to win the team. And so there's moments where it's in the conditioning where he's beating everybody in races. But the time when I talked to different guys on the staff, there was a practice before he had been named the starter where Devin White, obviously a great player, is just chirping the whole time. Offense sucks, you guys. That's not going to work. And Joe Burrow just, hey, Devin, if you don't shut the bleep up, I'm going to come over there and beat the bleep out of you. And everybody's like, whoa, what? And the coaches felt like, you know what? I think that's what Devin White wanted, because they'd never seen an LSU quarterback challenge the defense, because why would they at that point? Because they'd never done anything. So that got everybody's attention, that moment. Now, fast forward a year, not basically to the next spring. He's already been the starter. There's a practice where he gets into two fights. One where Jacoby Stevens is rushing the passer, jumps up to deflect a pass, and actually lands on Burrow. Burrow goes down. He'd been dealing with an off-season shoulder surgery, and that starts a brawl. Then, like a play later, Patrick Queen hits him late, and Burrow starts the brawl because he felt like he hadn't been in it enough on the one before. And Orgeron said he completed like 85% of his passes that day. They just lit up the defense. And he goes, when I walked off the field, brawl and all, two of them, I felt like we have got something really special. And everybody believed in Joe Burrow. And, like one of the things I'm most proud of about the book is if you're a Bengals fan, even if you're a Cincinnati Bengals fan, never mind LSU, go read the book, because you will come away convinced that Joe Burrow is going turn your franchise around, because his demeanor, his attitude, his brain, certainly all of that made a profound impact on LSU, because, obviously Brady brought a lot of elements from the Saints and from Penn State's RPO game that helped. But I just think the way he's wired to operate, and when you hear the coaches talk about Joe Burrow, you come away, if you were skeptical, you won't be anymore.
Bruce, it's funny because you mentioned Joe Brady, and Joe Brady has really been celebrated for being a major contributor to this offensive makeover, yet he wasn't really calling plays. Can you talk a little bit about how he influenced that offense and how he was able to help them make these, I would say, revolutionary changes to this offense to get it playing at a level we'd never seen an LSU offense play at before?
Right. So Bucky, Steve Ensmer is the play caller. He was the offensive coordinator, and what Brady really was responsible for was calling third downs and red zone, and they were really good in that. Even if you look at the national title game, Clemson had the best red zone defense in the country. I think LSU went 4 for 5 with touchdowns in there. What he did, they desperately wanted to add the RPO elements to the offense, and that's why. And Orgeron had worked for the Saints. Greg McMahon, the special teams guy at LSU, had spent a long time with the Saints. So they had Pete Carmichael coming to, like, they were going to share some ideas. And this was 2 years ago. And they asked Pete, do you have anybody who knows anything about RPOs? And he's like, well, I got a guy down the hall, because at the time, nobody knew who Joe Brady was, but he had been on James Franklin's staff at Penn State, where Joe Moorhead is had been really kind of an innovator on that front with RPOs. So Brady had that, plus he had, he's a brilliant guy. I mean, he'd spent all this time around Sean Payton and studying the touchdowns tape every week and all these other things that, he had been thinking about. So they were sold on him beyond that, of what he could bring. The other thing that I think is really, like, if I didn't see it with my own eyes, I wouldn't know it. Because, like, I think sometimes we in the media, and I'm not saying you guys do this, but I think a lot of writers tend to do it, is you look for kind of what you think is a profile is similar, even if the people really aren't actually similar. So you see, hey, Sean McVay, really young guy, offensive guy, innovator. Cliff Kingsbury, even though Cliff was a great player, a younger guy, looks cool. So maybe Joe Brady is that guy because he's an innovative offensive mind. And I think Joe Brady is that guy, but his personality is different from what I know from Cliff, and certainly what I know about Sean McVay. But having said that, this was interesting to me, is because he was also he worked with Mickey Joseph as coaching the receivers. And I would sit in the back of all the meetings, and towards the national title game, we're in these like huge hotel rooms, as you guys, remember those scenes. And there's, 20 rows of chairs. And the last 4 rows of chairs, I would sit with the staff other than Orgeron. And I remember the first couple times I would look around, I was like, where's Brady? I don't even see him. And then I'd look in the front of the room, and in the second row, I'd see Justin Jefferson and I'd see Jamar Chase. And next to Justin Jefferson, with Justin Jefferson's armor, I see that little red head. And it would be, because Brady has red hair and close cropped hair, and he'd be in the middle of the receivers. He wouldn't eat, at least the times I was around there, he wouldn't eat with the coaches necessarily. He'd eat with the receivers. And he is younger, but I mean, the rapport he had with those guys, it's not like he's just some, maybe unfair to say it like this, but it's not like he's like some young version of Charlie Weiss who thinks he's brilliant, but has no connection to the players. Like, he definitely has that. And I was impressed to see that, especially Justin Jefferson's a gregarious, fun to be around kid. But I saw the relationship between him and those guys, and I was like, okay, he has this club in his bag too, so to speak.
Yeah, I love the fact he's not detached at all. What about being in front of the room? Because this is something – look, Joe Brady, we've talked about it on the podcast. He's going to get interviews for head coaching gigs in the NFL this year because of the things you've mentioned. I've got to know him a little bit, but you know him much better than I do, and just being around him. How would you describe just his presence of being up in front of the room? We talk about blending in, but how is he when he's up there, if he's running a meeting?
He's good. I'll tell you what, you can tell he's really smart. It's going fast. His delivery is different. I would say this, that, seeing him in the offensive staff rooms, I think you can tell that he's on top of everything game planning. Like if you were in that room, I don't know if you would have said, oh, the redhead guy is actually the offense coordinator, not Steve Ensminger, because he was very influential in it. And in front of the, and I didn't see him in front of a full team meeting. I only saw him in front of the offense.
Yeah.
But the offense is, I don't know, 50 guys.
That's enough, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a big chunk of people. And what I thought he was really good at was being very affirmative. You're going to see this, and when they do this, this is what you're going to do. And I assume, and you guys would know this way better than me, but I assume that kind of mindset, I know why it works in college because you're dealing with 18, 19, 20-year-olds. I assume it would carry over just as well in the NFL, but it was always, they like to do this. And when they do this, this is what we do. And, and he would go through the scenarios. And so, what I thought how I felt like the balance was between he and Ensminger when they spoke was Joe would basically give them the blueprint of this is you're going to see, and this is why it's going to work. And Steve Ensminger would then hammer home the emotional piece, and it was real. Like Steve Ensminger was a much more impressive speaker in front of the group than I had expected because you knew it was real. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if Joe Brady was going to even want to tap into that. He was really given the blueprint, but I think he's going to ace interviews as to be a head coach because they're going to see how smart he is. The one thing I would wonder, and I haven't talked to Joe since the season started, is I imagine he's going to be very choosy because he knows time's on his side, and I think he is very smart. He wants to be, I think, more of an NFL guy. It's not like he sees himself as a college guy. I think he's really wired on the plays and how this works. So it'll be interesting to see how that grows. And I don't know, one of the challenges with this is if he does get to become a head coach, he has a relatively small circle in that, he was with the Saints for a couple of years. I can't imagine a bunch of the Saints guys are going to, move staff. He's obviously now with the Panthers. So it's not like Cliff, who had played in the NFL, had been around for a while, or Sean McVay, who spent, I don't know, his whole adult life basically around the NFL. So I think for Joe, going William and Mary to Penn State, and then, I think that would to me be an interesting piece of how he gets help assembling a staff if it comes to that.
Bruce, this program is loaded with NFL talent. They've always been. It's always been like a must-stop destination for NFL evaluators. When you look at this team, because we're talking about this team in legendary status in terms of their offense, but when you were just around them, watching them practice, did it feel like those old USC teams that you had seen in the past in terms of the amount of NFL talent and how they cultivated it and developed it?
It did. I mean, the thing Orgeron has always been big on, he actually went even further back and said they practice with the edge that the Miami teams practiced with back then. And what that translated to the most, he watched this clip in front of it was really his D-line guys. So it was probably 5 of us would be in there, 6 of us. And he watched a one-on-one rep from Jamar Chase going up against Derek Stingley Jr. And then he would click over to something that happened in another rep where they were together. And he was like, this is it. This is iron sharpens iron. You have probably the best, most talented cornerback in the country against the best receiver. And all those things, he doesn't want to see a scout team guy go up against a scout team guy. To him, that just doesn't really do anything for what they're trying to do right now. And so I think that part was a big thing. But you would see, one thing that was, I don't know if this is maybe read too much into it, but I tried to sit in different meetings at different times just to get a vibe. So at one point, it was a couple of days, I think, before the Georgia game, and I sat in the running backs room. And so Clyde is next to me, and I became a huge believer in Clyde over the course of the year. And I'm looking down, and Clyde took more notes in that meeting than I probably took in a semester at Miami, and I was like, okay, the guys who need to be the guys, they really get it, and you would see that, I just kept on thinking, I'm not surprised that Patrick Queen blew up last year. I mean, early on in the season, and Orgeron tells the story, is he gets a basically a message from Patrick Queen's family. They want to meet with him, both parents and Patrick. And at that point, he's thinking this kid's going to go in the portal. I already got like 2 guys who were kind of the starter. And the dad, who had been a former college player, said, what does he need to do to get better or to get on the field? And Ed basically gives him, what he wants to see from him. Patrick Queen takes that to heart. Patrick Queen was, as you guys know, was their best linebacker last year.
Yeah.
Phenomenal against Clemson, especially. And so you'd see guys really, really develop and get it. It wasn't just Joe Burrow, the Joe Burrow show. It was, but you'd see some of these other guys really blossom. You saw Clyde blossom. Obviously, you saw Justin Jefferson blossom, but I think you really saw it with Patrick Queen as much as anybody. Bruce,
I want to get to some of the big picture stuff around college football. We were talking about this a little bit before you came on, but it seems right now, I don't know if I can recall an era where we have more of the haves and the have-nots in the same teams over a prolonged period of time. When you look at Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama, obviously LSU had their run last year, but I would throw Oklahoma in there, and this year's a little different. But we've seen the same teams for a decade now. It's just over and over, and we're not. When you flip on the games, even though we're all in conference season right now this year, there's so few close games, so few competitive games. What is the biggest difference right now from the haves and the have-nots?
I just think they were recruiting at a different level. I think credit to Dabo because he built it, and they did build it on some really good players. But I think then all of a sudden success has bred success. Anybody who thought Nick Saban was going to tail off was kidding themselves. You just look at the receivers they have, right? And it starts with that. Like, I think Saban has definitely evolved. He talked about how Hugh Freeze and what he did at Ole Miss really influenced him to become more aggressive on offense. I think you see it certainly at Ohio State. The places that are cranking out the NFL talent are the places that have the best chance to win. And those are the ones where, like, they have so much more margin for error, really, is what I think it comes back to. And you look at some of these teams now, whereas Penn State, they went from having what they thought was going to be the best running back room in the country to one that's sorely depleted now, not just because they lose Journey Brown, Noah Cain's hurt, Ricky Slade earlier in the year transferred to ODU. And so what you see is a quarterback, Sean Clifford, who has, definitely has some ability, but it's not like he's not Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence. They have a terrific tight end, and Jahan Dotson's coming on, but there's not, I feel like teams are good enough where if you have one really, really good player, you can take that away, or at least you can kind of mitigate him. Whereas these other teams we're talking about, good luck with dealing with the Clemson receivers. And then Travis Etienne goes off, right? Good luck dealing with Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith and Najee Harris, because now here comes the guy from Canada, who's a really good player. And they have a really good offensive line. And Ohio State, what I think Ryan Day's done a really good job, and I think credit to Brian Hartline here especially, they have a tremendously deep group of receivers. And so it's pick your poison. Like that group a couple of years ago with Terry McLaurin and Paris Campbell and Johnny Dixon, somebody was going to go off. KJ Hill, now it's I talked to one of the guys I know on the staff. He was like, they have a freshman from Texas who had a great catch in week 1, and I'm blank, Jackson and Jibba. Maybe I mispronounced his last name. They think he's like a faster KJ Hill. It's this is how it is at some of these programs. And I think that makes it so hard to compete with them, just because you have no margin for error, because somebody, if it's not this guy, it's that guy. That's what really worked for LSU last year. You want to stop Jamar Chase? Great. Here comes, who killed Alabama last year? Clyde did.
Yep.
So it's just pick your poison. And if you're one of those teams that can do that and you have a really good quarterback who can distribute, then you're almost unbeatable.
Bruce, one of the things you talked about, 2 things that are really important. You talked about recruiting, and then you talked about player development. For those things to happen, it appears that you have to have a level of continuity on your staff. When I look at those top staffs, Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, there doesn't appear to be a lot of movement each year. How are they able to keep some of their top coaches around so they can continue to build on this superpower that they kind of put in place?
Well, they have financial commitment, one. That's a big thing. And then I certainly think where are you going to go if you're on Ryan Day's staff, right? Hypothetically speaking, and I work with him now, but if Urban Meyer gets another head coaching job somewhere, maybe in the Big 12, is his strength coach
just randomly threw that out there? Yeah. Big 12, huh? Just random. Okay.
But if is Mickey Marotti going to leave the strength coach who's been invaluable in Columbus to go leave Ryan Day to go someplace else? Is his recruiting guy gonna leave? Now maybe, I don't know that, but these guys already have really good situations. Chances are the only places you leave are to be a head coach, or maybe and the random, like Joe Brady had NFL roots, to go to the NFL. I mean, to me, the not craziest, but the most interesting subplot in all what we're talking about is the guy I would argue is the best defensive coordinator in college football right now. Brent Venables has been a phenomenal hire for Clemson. He's also a great recruiter, but he's had some opportunities to leave. And now he's got two sons who are there. So I don't see him leaving anytime. I've talked to him a little bit about this, where he knows himself well enough to go, I'm not just going to take any job, even if it's like a decent Power 5 job, because I love what I have here. And so the fact that they were able to keep a guy like that, I mean, Trevor Lawrence is great. Yeah, Travis is great. The defensive coordinator, so Clemson's been able, up till Jeff Scott. I mean, I know Chad Morris left, but for the most part, that Clemson group has stayed intact way more than certainly Nick Saban's group is. Now, what's different with Alabama is, and you guys know this, Nick Saban's really hands-on. It's all Nick Saban. I'm not saying the assistants don't do anything, but it's like Nick Saban's no walk-around guy. I mean, it's Nick Saban's, system, and everybody else gets it. The culture's established. That's what kids are buying into. So that's why I think those particular places are on a different level than everybody else. And we'll see. You mentioned Oklahoma. Certainly Lincoln knows exactly what he wants on offense. I think he has really good offensive staff, and we'll see if what Alex Grinch is doing on defense. They're starting to show signs that, at least I feel like there's been some baby steps, and it's a lot of 2 steps forward, 1 step back with them.
All right, last question, because you've been so generous with your time today, Bruce. But this is want to have a fun little exercise here. We always have to do these mock drafts, so we're going to bring you into the mock draft world, but we're not drafting players. Let's go 2 rounds. You're an NFL franchise who's been given an edict by your owner that you need to hire a college coach to be your next head coach. So I'm going to give you the first pick, Bruce. Bucky, you go second. I'm going to go 3rd and 4th, and we'll snake it back down. So we'll go 2 rounds here. You got the first pick, Bruce.
This guy hasn't won a national title, but the first name that jumps out for me is Ryan Day. And the reason why is, I think in this day and age, you got to be very, very player friendly. I think Ryan's really smart. He's got some stuff to him. He's also spent time in the NFL. He knows that world. I think he's really smart, and I think players know he's genuine. So he would, to me, be the guy I would say first.
Ooh, good pick. Nice pick. Who you got, Buck?
Okay, I'm going to go second. I'm going to take Brian Kelly from Notre Dame. And the reason why I'm going to take Brian Kelly is because he's had to deal with challenges with the academics at Notre Dame and then with the recruiting. I think he understands how to build a program. And so dropping him in an NFL franchise where he has complete power, I'm sure he hired a general manager, I think he'll understand how to build a program that is sustainable.
Ooh, I like that one. All right, so I was trying to think and trying to find somebody that could have a similar impact as Matt Rule and what he's done in Carolina. Now, this is a little different personality, but in terms of bringing toughness and in terms of developing players, which I think is the lost art right now with NFL coaches, and you're starting a program, I'm going to Utah. I'm taking Kyle Whittingham with my first pick.
Nice.
What do you think about that one, Bruce? Give me some feedback on that one.
I always say that working as a sideline reporter, the team that I see in a different light when you see them at field level is Utah. They are physical. They are nasty. I mean, every player runs like Zach Moss, and they're just, they're a little assembly line-ish where it's like, hey, that's John Penasini. That's that. It's like every year it's like there's somebody else who just kind of goes in and kicks somebody's butt.
Who's done better than Kyle, though, in terms of developing offense and defensive linemen and corners and safeties, really secondary players? Mm-hmm. They have 2nd, 3rd round picks every year at these positions. And I don't remember on recruiting day ever being like, oh, wow, look at Utah. They just killed it today.
No, and that's the God's honest truth. And there aren't that many guys who, like Garrett Bowles was like a guy who blossomed in recruiting, but I feel like there aren't like those. It's like, hey, Dennis Erickson did a really good job getting the 3 South Florida kids out of Hallandale. And I know he's not like an NFL star, but Tyler Huntley was a terrific quarterback for them. Obviously, Moss was really good. I think he's really good at – I don't think he's worried about the NFL. I think he's just like, I want to develop butt kickers here.
Yeah, Jalen Johnson, Julian Blackman, who's playing really well. I mean, there's a long list of Utah players who are doing good things. All right, you're up next. Oh, I get another pick.
Make draft. Right?
I got another pick. Okay, so I went Kyle Whittingham. I'm going to come back with Matt Campbell. So those are my 2 guys, Kyle Whittingham and Matt Campbell.
Wow. I like the smarts. I feel like we dropped the lead though, because if I'm gonna go to the college ranks, there's a guy who's already taken a team to the Super Bowl in Jim Harbaugh. Why aren't we excited about Jim Harbaugh making another return to the National Football League as a college coach?
You realize under this scenario, you are the general manager that's going to have to deal with said coach going forward, right?
Well, I mean, I understand that, but let's just say I'm at an ownership level, so I don't have to deal with it. Like I just want the results, and I've seen him turn around multiple programs, and even though it hasn't gone to the way that Michigan fans want, like I don't think there's any denying that this guy is a great coach, and he's been able to do some things without meeting the expectations that Michigan fans have had. So I'm gonna hire Jim Harbaugh.
DJ, you got the guy I would have picked second when you took Matt
Nice.
Campbell. I am he is all about substance, and he's all I mean that's a really good one. I'm tempted to try to guard against where I think you're going next, which is probably not the smartest draft.
You've got the last pick. This is it.
Oh, okay. We're only going 2 rounds. Man,
I mean, let's do one more round. Let's do 3 rounds. So you get 2 picks. You get 2 picks.
Nick Saban.
Okay, you're going Saban.
How is he still out there?
I think age. I think if you're looking at kind of building for the future, all that,
I mean, he should still be out there. I just don't know if does he want to go back? Like, he didn't seem like he enjoyed it much when he was there before.
Does he seem like he enjoys anything?
All right,
Every now and then he
one.
cracks up when he wins it.
All right,
You get one more. You get one more.
All right,
You get one more. Then
right.
Becky and I go.
I'm taking Scott Satterfield.
Oh, now we're talking. Took my guy.
Wow.
Yeah, I love what he did, especially after Bobby Petrino had basically salted the ground in Louisville, and players love him. I think he's a good offensive coach. I know he doesn't have all the pieces yet, but I think he's one. When you mentioned Matt Rule a little bit, I know they're different, come from different places, different personalities, but I feel there's some Matt Rule in him where it's just like he's real, and wherever he goes, he would fit anywhere. I don't know how many guys I would necessarily say that about.
I mean, since I'm piggybacking off the Jim Harbaugh tree, I think I'm going to go to Stanford and take David Shaw just because of the mix of NFL and college experience, the fact that he has been a part of like really solid offenses, and he's had the challenge of maybe doing a lot more with less. I think I'll throw him in the mix.
All right. Look, Lincoln Riley's still available. I got to take him. I mean, all he's done is this year withstanding, all he's done is win and develop quarterbacks and turn them into great players. So I get a good offensive mind who knows how to develop quarterbacks. I'll take that. So let's recap here. You had Bruce, you have Ryan Day. Who else do you got? Who are your 3 picks?
I have Ryan Day. I have the guy at Alabama who you both passed on.
Yeah, Saban.
Scott Satterfield.
Okay, that's good. Bucky, who'd you have?
I got Brian Kelly, Jim Harbaugh, and David Shaw. Man, I got some angry guys at the top. We don't have a lot of players, coaches, but a lot of anger. A lot of anger.
Well, David kind of balances that out. Shaw kind of balances.
Is Rich Eisen going to love you for taking Jim Harbaugh away from Michigan, or is he going to hate you?
Man, I don't know. That's the funniest thing.
He won't give you an honest answer to that. I promise. Then I ended up with Kyle Whittingham, Matt Campbell, and Lincoln Riley. I feel great about my draft there. All right, hey Bruce. What I know you guys are at home this weekend, but what are you looking forward to for this weekend? College football. What should we be watching for?
I want to see how Clemson does. They're a little depleted, but for me, what are we getting from Notre Dame? I still have the Louisville game too much in my head where there was kind of a clunker. I think Notre Dame's pretty good. I need to, we need to see it. Obviously, Florida, Georgia is big, and I'm excited. We're all on the West Coast. We have the 9 a.m. kickoff of USC, ASU, 2 really good young quarterbacks. I think Keaton Slovis is terrific, and they got really good skill guys around him. If USC does not run through their regular season schedule, either they had some bad issues roster-wise in terms of like guys who could get on the field for whatever reason, or something's wrong, because there's nobody who should be able to hang with this offense, at least on their regular season schedule.
Oh, that's good. We'll be on the lookout for that, man. This has been it's been a lot of fun catching up with our good buddy Bruce Feldman. Bruce, again, the book. Everybody, go check out the book. Flip the Script. All about the unbelievable year for the LSU Tigers, the incredible offense, Joe Burrow story, the Ed Orgeron personal stuff. You got a little glimpse of it here, but there's plenty more in the book. So I encourage you to go get it. I'm assuming, Bruce, they can find that Amazon, everywhere else where you can find books.
Yeah, just search for it on Amazon or go to my Twitter handle. It's like basically the link is right in my bio.
At Bruce Feldman?
At Bruce Feldman CFB.
At Bruce Feldman CFB. There you go. Well, our thanks to Bruce for joining us today. It's been a lot of fun, and thank you guys for hanging with us here on Move the Sticks, presented by Zaxby's.